Welcome back to Everywhere Radio. I'm your host, Whitney Kimball Coe, and today I'm thrilled to bring you a very special conversation with our new RAD. That is our new Rural Assembly Deputy Director. That's RAD for short. The RAD is a brand new position within the Rural Assembly. This person oversees our day-to-day operations. They are Grand Central Station, the nucleus, the center of activity, helping us connect the dots across staff and projects, across time zones and geographies, because in the post-pandemic era, our staff, our partners, our relationships, they're all scattered, so far from the Rural Strategies headquarters in Whitesburg, Kentucky. Rural Assembly operations and programs have really expanded over these last years. We've grown from a once-a-year in-person meeting and occasional advocacy campaigns to a multifaceted set of activities and online offerings. We've moved from one newsletter per week to 3 a week, and we're learning how to be better advocates and smarter, clearer communicators, addressing the unique challenges and opportunities facing rural America today. And so we need a RAD. We need someone who is detail-oriented and brings vision and new imagination to this work. Libby Lane comes to us from the rural Midwest, from the 16-county region in western Illinois, sometimes called Forgottonia. She grew up in a town of 3,000, fell in love with musical theater and acting, and ultimately made her way to Chicago, where she now lives with her wife and their rescue dog, Roxie. She's still a member of her rural community in Rushville and visits often. Before becoming our RAD, Libby served as Senior Marketing Manager for Bostrom, an association management firm in Chicago. She has more than 15 years of combined experience in the fields of nonprofit management, marketing, event planning, and user experience. She is Grand Central Station. Libby earned her BFA for musical theater from Millikan University and her MFA in acting from Western Illinois University. For regular listeners of this podcast, you know Libby's musical theater background is making me all kinds of happy. Welcome to Everywhere Radio. What do you want to say first?
This is the question we've been asking ourselves for the past few days. Our Slack has been nothing but, what duet should we sing? I love it. It's awesome.
We've traded all kinds of numbers. This morning, though, I came up with one that's not truly a duet, but it speaks to the notion of having a duet. So it's like Chicago, right? And Roxie and Velma singing "I Can't Do It Alone." That song really hit me this morning, and this is the hope that I have for us going forward. Libby, is we're like Roxie and Velma.
We are Roxie and Velma.
We're gonna take the stage together. It
feels
good.
Like it was meant to be. It was written in the stars, right? Down to right off the bat, just telling you in our kind of first interview, what did I say? I said, Whitney, I feel like I've manifested this role, looking for a way the past couple of years to really get back to my roots and honor communities like the one that I came from, that I'm still really involved in and connected to back home in Rushville. So here I am. I'm so excited.
You started down the path just now the first question I wanted to ask you, because I do have to establish like the rural cred for pretty much everybody who comes on the podcast, or at least articulate the level of allyship that exists. And I love your story. And your continued connection to your hometown is really important in your life. But I wanted you to talk a bit about how you straddle, growing up, living in rural, being a farm kid, and staying in relationship with that community, but also living in Chicago and having access to all kinds of, opportunities that you've had. So just tell us a little bit about that.
That's a great question. I always kind of say that I'm a twist cone of like urban and rural. Maybe that's a nod to like the good old twist cone.
You're a dreamsicle.
I'm a dreamsicle. But I born and raised in a tiny little town in West Central Illinois that I still just love so dearly. But yes, living in Chicago on the north side of the city with my wife and our fabulous rescue dog. But rural has always been, I feel like if you're a rural kid, you don't fully ever leave it, right? Like it's always home. It really is. There's always that thread that pulls me back into those gravel roads and the cornfields and the people, and going into the county market when we go home and knowing every single person in there and having them ask about how we're doing, how are things up in the big city. So glad to see you home for a little bit. And just honestly, like, there's just, Chicago's awesome. I love it. It's a great city, vibrant, full of so much culture, so many things to do. And there is nothing like heading down to Rushville on I-55. And you kind of get out of, you lose the skyscrapers in the background, and your rear view mirror starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then all of a sudden it's this, my wife Kelly always laughs at me because, like, we'll go home for Christmas and then we might not come back again until the spring. We hope that we could, but if we can't, all of a sudden will see the corn. It's always the corn for me. There's this real connection. That's my farm roots to the corn. And the minute I see the first cornfield, which is about, I don't know, like 40 miles outside of Chicago, it's like this moment. I really have this like magical, like, moment with God, to be honest with you. It's like a really profound moment of connection back to everything that raised me, the ground, the soil, my family, the generations of farmers that have farmed that land in West Central Illinois and still are actively today. So, it is this, I do straddle both, both sides, and there's room for all of it. There's room for the urban and the rural, and even in some of the work that Rural Assembly in the Center, are doing, is kind of figuring out that sort of bridge between both of those worlds.
Trying to articulate, right? What are those connections?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when I was reading your bio, and you mentioned that you're from the 16 county region that's often called Forgottonia. And this is the first time I had heard of that. But, of course, I Googled it, and there's, all kinds of commentary about it, from political to social to cultural, and how it's been used in kind of a stereotypical way, and also in a demeaning way, and then also how it's been reclaimed.
Yeah, 100%.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
why you included in your bio.
It is, to me, it's like a badge of honor. It started in the 1960s. I think it was, and I can't remember what his name was, but this group of students in I think that were studying at Western Illinois kind of were identifying all of these gaps with, that area of Illinois not being funded by the state, kind of feeling left out by state government, and feeling left to our own sort of devices, and, highways, and there's just no money for anything. So they kind of dubbed that 16 county area over there Forgottonia. And to me, that's just, I've written about it. I've written pieces about that, and something that there's like that pride, right? That I think anybody that comes from like a small rural community has that. What is your badge? Like, what is your badge of honor and your badge of pride for being from a place that is so resilient and connected to each other? And, it's beautiful to me.
And, another piece of your story is, of course, about musical theater and acting. And, I just think it shows already in the week and a half that we've been working together, it's shown up for me that you aren't afraid of, holding space, and, being a leader in a space, which is so necessary and beautiful. And I just wonder, if you tell us more about your connection to musical theater and what that's meant to you, and also if it's how it might have aligned with some of your growing up years.
It aligned with everything where I come from. Pandora's Playhouse is our community theater, and that was started, by our like Schuyler County Arts Council back in, I think, the 60s. And so from the time it was always clear. I think it was always clear to everybody in my family. I was like going to be the one. There's always got to be one, right?
Holding the space.
There's got to be one holding the space. So, my very first musical was Annie, Get Your Gun. And there's a whole story where they said, we'll call the girls on Tuesday and all the boys on Wednesday to let them know. And I sat by the phone all Tuesday. And I didn't get a call because they cast me as little Jake. They cast me in the boy role. And so, Wednesday came and they called and offered me the role, and I feel like that's where I got my start.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's such a good story.
yeah. So, oh my gosh, like I said, our community has a really thriving arts program. Pandora's Playhouse is still going strong. We have an arts center called The Hub right up on the square that Erin Eveland, who's a good friend of mine, started a few years ago, and it's blowing up. They bring exhibits in, galleries in from all over the country, and they have classes and events, and that's really thriving. So, talking about just creating those spaces and community for folks to, come together and to get their culture fix is, I think it's being done really well in my little town. So I'm really proud of that.
You mentioned Annie Get Your Gun, but what were some of the other roles
Oh,
that you've really
oh
loved
gosh.
playing? You told me about Miss
I
Lovett
was Mrs.
early
Lovett.
on. You got
That was my swan
Sweeney
song in
Todd.
grad school. I played Mrs. Lovett at Western. That was my very last hurrah right before I was graduating with my master's, which was just so incredible. It was such a fun production, and Sweeney was one of our professors, so I got to, sing opposite of him, and so that was great. Gosh, up in Chicago, I've been everything from a cow to a hen. A lot of work with children's theater. Shout out to Emerald
Yeah.
City Theater Company and Lifeline Theater Company up here on the north side, and Pride Films and Plays. I was the original Ethel Merman in the world premiere of Leo Schwartz's The Book of Mormon, which is clearly a play on the Book of Mormon. But it's like, what happens when two Mormon missionaries ring the doorbell of Ethel Merman? So we got to do the cast recording for that, and now that's being produced all over the country, which is really cool. Kind of to have been the first one in that role. And I will give a shout out to Rushville. They got a tour bus, and the local bank, Rushville State Bank, like got together this whole tour, like of people that wanted to come up and see me in it. So they like rented this huge charter bus and came all the way up to Chicago, and it was like sold out. And talk about, again, right, bringing that, bridging that link back to community and the love that flows in a small town, and the pride there is real and really, it's emotional, right? It's emotional work. Yeah.
We'll be right back after this from the Daily Yonder.
Hi, I'm Anya Slepian with the Daily Yonder. Check out the Yonder Report, a weekly podcast rounding out the latest rural news. Produced by the Daily Yonder and Public News Service, you can listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, back to Everywhere Radio. If you don't mind, too, I wonder if you would talk a little bit about your identity with as being part of the LGBTQ community, and how, and your experience of being rural, and part of that community, and now you find yourself in Chicago. How does that straddling work and feel?
Yeah, of course there are challenges that come with that, and I think that's why some of the work that I'm really excited to do with Rural Assembly is supporting those marginalized voices in rural communities. We just kind of had a conversation about the fact that rural communities anyway feel like they a lot of times don't have a voice and get ignored. And then to be a marginalized person within a community that already is feeling like they're marginalized is, doubly really challenging. But I have to say, like, on the whole, my community is just so loving and so supportive. And I've actually had folks come up to me and know that I'm a safe person to be able to share their story with. And I've had several folks talk to me about their own journeys or journeys that they're having with a family member who is coming out. And, that's so serious to me. That's so weighted, not in a negative way, but man, talk about it's my duty. I think that's what has led me back to this work is like, can I be a voice? What can I do to have a platform to help, to support, to blow away stereotypes, to bridge, to remind folks that we're all human, all of us. And that is my lens that I come at this with, is like, I really do try to love regardless, I try to keep space open for folks. And I think that basing relationships in just love and human connection and truth can do a lot, can open up a lot of, healing.
And, in your desire to come back to the rural advocacy space and to be part of the Rural Assembly, I wonder about, your impressions of the Rural Assembly and, why you felt like this was a space that you could really dig into and, in the way you were just describing.
I remember right around the time that I saw that job posting pop up, I jumped back on the Rural Assembly's website, and you were in the middle of doing this initiative with the love letters to LGBTQ youth in rural communities. And I mean, I really had a profound moment of kind of emotional overload with that, thinking of my own journey and how hard that is, how hard it is anywhere, And then if you're, find yourself in the midst of a rural place where you have no advocacy and no support and no place to go, and you don't know where to turn to, and you don't know who you can talk to and know that you're going to be safe and loved and championed and supported and hugged. That is just so scary. It's so scary. And so I remember seeing that and just really have that reaction of this is the work. This is the work, being able to send a love letter to a kid in a rural community that is gay and having a hard time coming out and doesn't know if they're safe to do that and what those repercussions might be. I think that was that moment where I'm like, I want to be a part of this. How can I be a part of this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I need to give a shout out to the Rural Youth Catalyst Project for leading for curating, creating, and leading that Love Notes project. That is, I think it's on. The plan is to continue doing those and to bridge it into other projects as well within the Rural Assembly. And I know your presence now is going to help us connect a lot more of those dots. So. Kimberly Finney and Kathleen Moxon of the Rural Youth Catalyst Project. Just want to give them a shout out. The one other question I wondered about Rural Assembly and, your impressions of it, where do you see it going in the next, even just the next year? It seems like, our lives have been turned upside down, of course, by pandemic and by political, social and cultural, reckonings that have needed to happen. And Rural Assembly is not immune to all the things that are happening out in the world. In fact, we're trying to respond in really thoughtful, sensitive, and sustainable ways.
Yes.
And so it makes me excited to think about what could be next for Rural Assembly, but just in broad strokes, I wonder if you have apply your imagination and visioning to.
Well, as you know, my background is coming from Bostrom, which, is an association management company. So we manage all facets of nonprofit, associations. And so that's the world that I've come from. And what I think I'm really excited about exploring is this whole idea of how we connect more folks to Rural Assembly and what we're doing. How do they, how do we connect to them? How do they connect to each other through the work, through this platform, through this organization? And take that out into the world. How does that influence and where is a place where folks can really come together and have a safe place to land, right? And a place to come back to and be connected to us, to each other. And I see that as just something that's really exciting when I really think about the future and what that could look like. That's kind of at the top of my list.
So now I'd like to ask you about some really important things. And I have 10 short questions for you to just throw at you. And I want you to just respond with whatever is top of mind.
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to rock it out.
After a week and a half or so with us, who is your favorite staff member at Rural Strategy so far?
No, unacceptable.
You're not going there.
All of the above.
You can change it at the end if you want to just start with one. Okay.
Teresa, she is the warm blanket that holds all of us together. I feel like there is some, no,
That's what I would answer
I
to.
love everyone. Everybody's equally incredible, but there is something about Teresa that like makes me just want to like, I just want her to hug. I just need a hug. I'm just going to like build in time to come down to Whitesburg and get like a quick hug from her and then
Yeah.
go right back home. It's only a 40-minute plane ride.
She gives great hugs, and she's also a badass and will kick somebody's ass for you
She
if
is,
you,
I'm like,
if you need it.
the newest member of her fan club.
She's all that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you should just we should all just own that Teresa.
I think so. Can we just say that? Can we just claim that?
We'll all say that. Yep. Okay. Number 2, you love musical theater. What is your favorite show of all time?
Music Man. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Music Man. It's everything.
Really?
I mean, it's like this show I first really understood what musical theater was all about. My grandmother would make me sit in the living room and watch Music Man every Christmas while they were like cleaning up from dinner before we could open presents. And like, it's a running joke in my family now that like, you know, grandmother Ruth would always make me go into the front room and she'd put on the Music Man for me because I'd be so anxious to want to open presents right after dinner, but they wanted to get the dishes clean and put away. And so I think that was probably actually the root of where all this started. Thanks, grandmother.
That is, my grandmother introduced me to the Music Man too. And she even directed it a couple of times at different places where she lived. And I think my mother was Amaryllis,
Amaryllis
in the Music Man, and Amaryllis. Yep. And I love the music.
Just one more way we're like literally soul sisters here.
Yeah.
All these threads.
So true.
Okay.
All right. Next one. What's your favorite meal? What's the best meal you've ever had?
Oh man. Okay. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I mean, I'm going like totally Rushville, like, homemade noodles on top of mashed potatoes with gravy and like, you know, chicken, like just good old homemade comfort food.
Sounds really good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yep.
Number 4, what's a place you've always wanted to visit?
Italy. Kelly and I were just talking about this, like yesterday, like top of the bucket list. Italy, got to get there. Drink all the wine, eat all the pizza. Just
okay.
No, just the wine.
It's Italy.
Okay. Wine and pasta. Okay. Is there any more reason to go?
That's
enough said. Just
art,
the whole thing. Art.
Yeah.
Just Italy. Just all of Italy. Yeah.
Okay. Number 5. What's the best place you've ever visited? What's a place you love to come back to?
We love Puerto Rico. Like, love it. We're both kind of infatuated with Puerto Rico, San Juan, and just, we've been there. I've been there, 5 times now? And Kels and I have gone together, I think 3 at least. The people, oh my gosh, it's just, it's the most beautiful island, full of like the most beautiful people. We always kind of joke, like, they all like just smell so nice. And there's this like sweet, like beautiful, like loveliness to Puerto Rico, and the people are beautiful, and the ocean, and it's just this like really lovely place to be. You know, it just feels magical. Yeah.
And in the rural advocacy space, there's a lot of opportunity for us to be thinking about and working with and talking to our neighbors in Puerto Rico who, are considered a territory, but they don't have all the, the rights of and roles that
so true.
we enjoy here. So there's a lot of overlap. So anyway,
it's beautiful.
Very cool.
Everybody needs to go.
Number 6, what is your perfect Saturday?
Oh man, my perfect Saturday is taking a walk down by the lakefront with Kel and Roxie. That's a great place to go on the weekend. Nice walking paths all the way along the lakefront of Lake Michigan. Probably in the summer, it's being on our deck. So, I have a big green thumb, but we have a very small space to do that in here in the city. So it's, perfect Saturday is walk on the lakefront and then coming back and spending time in my little urban garden out here all day long, reading, grilling. We love to
Mm-hmm.
grill. That's the perfect Saturday.
What is one of your earliest, happiest memories?
Oh my goodness. One of my earliest, happiest memories is probably like my mom and I. One of my favorite memories of when I was little was my mom taking me to voice lessons over in Jacksonville, Illinois, which is about half an hour away from Rushville. And she taught me how to harmonize to Edelweiss. So from The Sound of Music, like she kind of taught me
Oh my
like what it
gosh.
meant to like figure out how to harmonize and understanding like the theory behind that. So I think I always come
Mhm.
back to that. That's like a real core memory for me is being in junior
Mm,
high and like really spending that time with my mom who's incredibly musical. I mean, she's like, the ultimate musician. She plays like every
that's
instrument. She has
amazing.
perfect pitch. She didn't give that to me, but
Oh, I was gonna ask, do you want to try? We could try it together. Do you remember the
yeah.
harmony?
You want me to do the harmony or the
You want to try?
melody?
Okay, I'll do the melody.
Okay. Pick
My
a
mom didn't
key.
teach me that harmony part, but I'll. Okay. Edelweiss,
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 Edelweiss.
every
Every morning
morning
you
you greet
greet
me,
me,
small
small
and
and
white,
white,
clean
clean
and
and
bright.
bright.
You
You
look
look
happy
happy to
to
greet
greet Is it greet or meet? It's
me.
one or the other. Oh, that was so fun. Well,
Okay,
thank you. That's so
we're
good.
gonna tweak it. We're
Yeah,
gonna
we'll
tweak
do
it.
it.
That was a good start.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, finish this sentence. The world would be a better, kinder, more joyful place if.
We all came at relationships and each other from a place of love, from a place of hearing each other and listening to each other before reacting and assuming.
Number 10, my daughter Lucy's favorite question to ask people, she's 12, is if you could have any superpower,
Oh
what would it be?
man. If I could have any superpower, what would it be? Mm, mm. I think it would be I think it would be flight. Is that like that that's like so
No,
like
I think that's
I
totally a
think I just
superpower.
want to
That's amazing.
fly. What would it feel like to be able to fly
Mhm.
around? I mean, I already have the
Yeah.
cape. I just need to figure out a way to use it.
Yep. Nice. Nice. Flight would be mine too. That's good. All right. And then this is the bonus
Okay.
question that I ask all of our um, guests, and it's so good. I'm excited to hear what your answer to what are you watching
Uh,
or listening to or reading that is bringing you joy or is challenging you in good
mm,
ways, and you want to share it
mm.
with the rest of us.
Great questions. I'm reading Sarah Smarsh's Heartland, which is I'm like hanging on every single word. I feel like she grew up in Kansas and I grew up in West Central Illinois, but man, are our lives like parallel down to some of the even lines she's written. I'm like, this is me. Like, this is my life. Heartbreaking and beautiful and poignant. And I'm just like a Sarah Smarsh super fan. And then on the other side of Kansas, or closely, is Manhattan, Kansas, with the series Somebody Somewhere about what's Bridget Everett plays Sam, who comes back home to her small town in Manhattan, Kansas, because her sister has passed away, and she kind of it's just this really wonderful, beautiful, like really nice glimpse into just her world and what it means to come. I mean, honestly, what we're talking about, it's exactly what it means to come back home and how to connect, how to find connections, and her relationship with her, who becomes her best friend Joel. Just it's such a refreshing. The episodes are a half an hour, and it's just so nice. It's such a nice break from like Succession, which I also love. And there's a place for that. But when you just want that, like good, like you're just watching these friends, it just feels like you're like watching this friendship unfold, and it's just lovely.
Well, Libby, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience
Oh
today?
man.
Or, they're going to get to know you over,
Yeah.
time as well. But I feel like you've you've offered.
I feel like I come from a place of transparency. I love people connecting. I love getting to know the community. So I think more than anything, I'm really excited about getting to know. I mean, in this week, I've already met like so many incredible folks we've been on calls with, talking about different, different plans and programming, and talking to all these people from all over the country who are just doing really incredible things. I just am really super psyched to be a part of all this. And I can't wait to connect with everybody out there and bring us all, keep working to bring us all together.
Me too. Can't wait to do it with you. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Whitney.
We'll see you back on Everywhere Radio again.
That sounds good. Thanks.
If you enjoyed Everywhere Radio, we'd love for you to consider subscribing to the General Rural Assembly newsletter, where we promote new offerings from the Assembly and amplify the good work of our many partners across the country. We also have an advocacy newsletter that comes to inboxes on Mondays to help you start each week with a quick take on the top issues that we're tracking across the nation. Everything from broadband policy to reproductive justice. Just head over to ruralassembly.org to sign up. If you're a true fan of Everywhere Radio, please let us know by rating us wherever you get your podcast. And if this isn't your cup of tea, no biggie, it's fine. We'd like to thank our media partner, the Daily Yonder. Everywhere Radio is a production of the Rural Assembly. Our senior producer is Joel Cohen. Our associate producers are Teresa Collins and Anya Slepyan. And Susanna Brown is our assistant producer. You can be anywhere, we'll be everywhere.